What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Now, we assume for some characters, Avengers Secret Wars is going to be a final outing, especially for actors who have been portraying the character for several decades. But for some of the OG Avengers or characters introduced during the Infinity Saga, we know they're sticking around. For instance, Doctor Strange, because we need the third installment of his franchise, which doesn't look like it's coming out before Avengers Secret Wars. And the same could be said for Chris Hemsworth's Thor, who's basically been a part of the MCU since its inception and a part of all its biggest releases, even with a quick cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine. If it's topped the box office for Marvel, good chance Thor's been a part of it. And we know that Chris Hemsworth is sticking around because of multiple sources reporting on a Thor 5 in development and supposedly to be released. Again, it doesn't look like it's going to come out before Avengers Secret Wars. Now, several quotes from Chris Hemsworth himself admitted that Thor 5 really got crazy with the character, and in other words, he wanted to make sure that the next movie changed its tone. And that's why, on the back of the success of Mad Max Furiosa, you started to hear George Miller's name in rumblings and possibly rumors that he could direct Thor 5, at the very best, just at least a great choice by Marvel Studios, because Furiosa was awesome, and George Miller himself said he would work again with Chris on anything. Well, according to today's rumor, that went a lot further, and apparently Chris Hemsworth actually set up a meeting between Marvel Studios' Kevin Feige and George Miller, and there's some interest there for two possible films in the MCU. We're going to go over this entire rumor, what they said, and the real likelihood that George Miller may be directing one or two Marvel movies in Phase 7. But first, if you could quickly grab the subscribe button. We do daily Marvel content, that's all we do. So if that sort of thing's for you, hit the sub button, leave a comment down below. That automatically enters you for our PS5 giveaways. We'll get into that stuff at the end of the video. Okay, so as I mentioned during the prologue, George Miller tied to Thor 5 is not exactly new. People have been talking about it for months, but this is a brand new rumor according to the editorial World of Real, which we have re-reported on briefly here at the channel a couple of times, but we don't really have a read on their accuracy. So for now, leave it in grain of salt territory. This is what they had to say. Last night, a listing on Production Weekly had World War Hulk shooting in 2025. I decided to reach out to a few of my sources and confirm this bit of news, and what I got was quite a lot of information. Although plans are not quote-unquote official at the moment, the goal is indeed to shoot the film this year. Mark Ruffalo is set to come back in the titular role, and his character will have a very busy year, as this coming February's Captain America Brave New World will set up World War Hulk for him, and a few months later, Thunderbolts will be a connecting branch for the character's first solo MCU movie. It's pretty wild how Marvel boss Kevin Feige hasn't given us a Hulk movie in the MCU yet. I get it that the rights were an issue and slowed down the process, but there's honestly nothing that money can't buy when it comes to Disney. They'll nab the rights if they haven't already. Quick side note, by all reports, they have gotten the rights back from Universal, and now this is a possibility. Yes, guys, I realize he's talking about World War Hulk and not Thor 5. Give the scoop a minute. I will also mention that, again, this is not new. We have been hearing about World War Hulks for a while too, and alongside those reports that Marvel Studios obtained the rights in full for both Namor and Hulk back from Universal, opening up the idea that they could make another solo Hulk film, but this time, of course, it gets to be Mark Ruffalo instead of before. If you remember, it was Edward Norton. Now, here's the most interesting intel I gathered last night. Feige has reached out to numerous directors for World War Hulk, including George Miller. Additionally, Miller has shown interest in helming Thor 5, and it was actually his Furiosa star Chris Hemsworth who set up the meeting between Miller and Feige. Now listen, if this is true, A, it would be a huge score by Marvel Studios, and B, if he's actually interested, he's probably going to get one or both of these films. If you go down the list of directors for Marvel Studios in Phase 4 and Phase 5, outside of some huge names like Chloe Zhao or known commodities in the superhero space like Sam Raimi, they used the opposite of well-knowns, basically complete unknowns. Now, some people argue that's because Marvel Studios wants to do this movie by committee, and they know if they hire a deterministic, a hard-headed, a visionary of a director, that they might be met with sort of pushback for things that the directors want to do. Look, Chloe Zhao insisted on shooting on location for a lot of Eternals, which actually inflated the budget. She's from the school of art house. It was super important to her. And while I totally agree that on location basically always looks better than a sound set, not from the point of view sometimes of producers at Marvel Studios who are trying to get these movies done when the budgets are already in excess of multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. And so again, the critique here is that Marvel Studios has opted to go with lesser unknown directors to do some of these big films because they don't want the pushback from someone who's going to come with a name and possibly an ego in tow. George Miller would be a huge score for Marvel. It's who they absolutely should go with, and if they learn their lesson here properly from the mistakes over the last, say, half decade or decade or so, the movie by committee is the thing that doesn't work. if you hire good scriptwriters and a good director, they can put their spin on things, take care of the movie themselves. It doesn't need to be movie by committee. You won't have to interject to make things better if they're already good. And again, I think movie by committee is what's been plaguing a lot of these films as of late. Now, of course, that's probably not going to change. The Russos, the Marvel Studios, they have a workflow. So for the immediate future, however they did Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, they're probably going to look back at that workflow and say, hey, we just need to replicate that. But going forward into Phase 7, Phase 8, Phase 9, where forget talking about the record of number of connected films. Marvel Studios beat that a long time ago. It's just now, in the face of that, they're going to have to continually try to differentiate or reinvent, make these movies that are set apart from all the superhero movies that came before it. And the way you do that is with good, unique writers and especially good, unique directors. George Miller is the kind of director you want, especially for Thor 5, and his take on sort of a post-apocalypse might translate well into World War Hulk. But both of those films, either or, would be a total win to have George Miller attached to. And so I'm hoping that as far as rumors go, this one is real and that this all comes to fruition. And look, guys, there's a reason channels like mine exist, because even though not everything is accurate in the rumor mill and the Marvel scoop game, a lot of it is. A lot of it that we end up finding out as official is coming downstream and from these scoopers. So it's just really a game of separating the wheat from the chaff. And in this case, I'm really hoping that this is all factual. George Miller would be an awesome land. Now, as far as Thor 5 goes, there's no reason to think that it's going to be the same disaster that Thor 4 was. Not only are they not using Taika Waititi again, but Chris Hemsworth has admitted in interviews that the tone would need to change, that Thor 5 needs to be completely different from what happened with Thor Love and Thunder. And in the face of most of what I said during this video about the right directors and the right scripts, what plagued Thor Love and Thunder in the first place was that the script wasn't quite done, wasn't quite finished. Basically, it was a draft. And the movie itself suffered because of that. It felt unfinished and not good and rough in a lot of ways that you expected it not to be because of his success with Thor Ragnarok. That's why changing the director, changing the tone, and making it more of a serious film is going to be great for Thor in redeeming his character and what the MCU needs. Also, I think some of these OG Avengers staying on to play these characters into the Mutant Saga is also super important, because we saw how much the wheels came off at the end there in the Infinity Saga. They killed off Cap, they killed off Iron Man, really sent the MCU spiraling. Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, his Black Panther may have been the glue that they needed. They need to keep some of these characters too, so that it doesn't feel like a complete soft reboot when we hit the Mutant Saga and then all of these OG Avengers characters are gone. The connectiveness is what we want, and they still need to be around. But you guys let me know all your thoughts down below. Is George Miller the right pick for Thor 5 and World War Hulks? If not, who you got? I'm all yours as always. Remember to hit the sub button to be entered to win the PS5. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at IamFires. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.